Here is the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, episode number 68. This podcast is being recorded on the lands of the Turrbal people. I acknowledge them as the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. They were the first music makers on this land. I'm Debbie O'Shea and welcome to another episode of the Crescendo Music Education Podcast. In this episode, it's part one of my talk with Dr. Jason Goopy. I know Jason quite well through my work with Kodai Australia. However, I'm not as familiar with his work in the more academic sphere, with his PhD and his work with research. So it's so fascinating finding out more about that side of Jason's career. I think you're going to love listening to Dr. Jason Goopy. And we have, for this episode of the Crescendo Music Education Podcast, Dr. Jason Goopy. Hello, Jason.
Hello, Debbie. Thanks for having me.
Oh, as if I couldn't have Jason Goopy. Oh my goodness. You are, you've helped us so much here in Australia with music education. And I look up to you. You're so organised and together. And well, that's the projection that you give anyway.
Oh, that's very kind. Well, my projection's doing very well then.
All right. Now I'm going to start by reading your bio for the people who have not yet met you. So Dr. Jason Goopy is a recognised teacher, scholar and leader in music education. He is currently lecturer and coordinator of secondary and instrumental music education at Edith Cowan University and draws upon 15 years of leading arts programs and teaching music in Australian combined primary and secondary schools. And I might just add to your bio there that that's in Perth and we miss you in Brisbane.
Oh, thank you. I like to think of myself as sort of having dual citizenship between Queensland and WA.
That's a long way to have a foot in each camp, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a big spread. Okay, now where am I back to? Oh, he received the Australian Society for Music Education Callaway Doctoral Award and his subsequent monograph, Teenage Boys, Musical Identities and Music Education, an Australian Narrative Inquiry, will be submitted to, now how do you say that? Is it Rutledge?
That's right.
Oh, it is. Rutledge later this year for publication. Phew. Jason is the recipient of an ECU Early Mid-Career Research Grant and is currently examining the potential of trauma-informed community music education to support the well-being of young people using a highly qualitative arts-based research methodology. It's a mouthful, but I think I'm following. Okay.
Yeah, you've got it.
He serves on the editorial boards of the International Journal of Music Education and the International Journal of Research in Choral Singing. Jason is the current national president of the Australian Society for Music Education, immediate past president of Kodai Australia, and an advisory group member for the Alberts Tony Foundation National Project, Music Education Right from the Start. All I can say before I even get you to comment on that is I have always been really grateful to know that you are working in these associations and moving in these fields. Look, I know it's not a hierarchy, but I want to say above where we're operating here on the ground and you're up there having influence on policy and direction and working at things at that level as well as coalface. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think I have two passions. You know, I have the on the ground, you know, in the classroom. I love teaching. I love teaching my students in all contexts that I've worked. But I equally love as well that strategic that strategic view, looking at systems and policies. And I'm a real advocate that if we get systems and policies right, it means and it empowers that teachers are on the ground able to do their job better. So I feel like sometimes they can seem as like they're disconnected, but actually when they can work in tandem together, that's when we have the opportunity for students and teachers to flourish.
Absolutely. And I think we all have experienced in our own way that if the systems and processes that are enforced, that we live within, that we work within, they can actively work against us. If we sit and do nothing, we can literally lose our programs because people up there making decisions have basically thought, oh, we've got other priorities. So if we don't have people at that level advocating for us, we're lost, really.
Yes, yes, absolutely. It's so important. And I guess the point is that you have to be involved. You have to get involved because decisions are made by those who show up.
Yes. Now, what is that saying? I think I want to attribute it to Marie Hennessy. It's better to be at the table than on the menu.
Yes, I've heard that before as well from Marie. And absolutely, I agree. We've just got to be involved. That's
Yes.
it, really.
Yes. So in fact, we should all take that. I mean, not that all of us can be doing these amazing things you're doing, but even just being part of your professional association or, you know, knowing what your system is doing where you work. You might be able to be on a little, you know, a committee at your school or at the next regional level or something. I think we all need to have our voices heard. But we're really lucky, to go back to you, we're really lucky to have you working at these other levels that you've worked hard to get there, and you've now got a voice that can be heard.
And I think that's what I'm trying to do as well. I don't see it as a hierarchy or as a a climbing the ladder position, so to speak. I really see it as an opportunity to serve. And in my particular upbringing, going to St Lawrence's College, a huge emphasis on service leadership, and that's been really ingrained into me. And I see it as an opportunity to represent the Australian music education community and serve them and myself as well, but helping us strengthen what we do, make it a bit more visible, give some voice to it, and really affect some positive change.
I think that is amazing. And I'll just express my thanks again and everyone's thanks. So thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, Jason. Let us know if
Thanks.
you ever need any support from the ground. We'll help you. All right. So in that bio, is there anything else you would like to add to that summary of your work?
Well, when writing it, and you write bios for lots of different things all the time, but in this particular one that you read out, I'm really proud, and I counted, the word music is mentioned 11 times. And that's really significant for me because there's been numerous critical junctures in my life where I've needed to make decisions that could have taken me away from music. I've been pulled in different directions, but I've always come back to music because it feels like home to me. And in my doctoral research, one future year 12 student said, as long as I'm doing music, I'll be fine. And this has really resonated with me in my thinking about my pathway. So what I decided to do a little while ago, in everything that I do, music and music education must be at the center of my work.
I love that. I love that. And you can see it and feel that. So that's wonderful. Now tell us about your PhD. It's a lot of work, and people that I know that have done PhDs have gone at various stages during their PhD. Why am I doing this PhD? So, how long did it take you? And tell us a little bit from the inside.
Yeah, really good question. I have to start by saying that it was the most rewarding and most challenging thing that I've ever done. It was really an extreme of highs and lows, a roller coaster ride. And I did it part-time as well across 7 years while teaching full-time in schools and involved in professional teacher associations.
Whoa.
So it was certainly a hard slog. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend doing it that particular way, but I would certainly recommend doing research studies because there's so much value in that and we need more of it. So my particular thesis investigated adolescent boys' music values, uses, and identity work in a single-sex independent school. And I did my doctoral studies at the University of Queensland School of Music under the supervision of Professor Margaret Barrett and Associate Professor Julie Ballantyne. Mm-hmm. Thesis, a research work is all about generating new knowledge. And the new knowledge that my thesis generates contributed to the nexus or the interface, the center between music education and music psychology using narrative inquiry. And adopting the role of teacher researcher at an Australian independent boys' school, I co-constructed 6 rich and unique stories revealing the intricate values, functions, and roles of music and how it plays in the processes of identity construction of Year 12 classroom music students. And basically, the short story is my study argued that music education can and should seek to positively shape and support student musical identities. It exposed the multiple musical identities present in one senior secondary music classroom and presents a broad framework for teaching music based on this particular context. And, you know, music education, particularly in schools, is often criticised for being irrelevant. And my study serves as an example of if you can entangle all the various aspects of the ways that music operates in young people's lives, it can be very successful. So the curriculum, the co-curricular, home and informal settings, all working together in this interconnected web of music making. So what I've done, and it's been a dream of mine to turn this thesis and these stories of students that I was teaching, and I'm so grateful to the students and the parents for sharing these stories. It's been a dream of mine to turn it into a book for quite a while now. And I went through a process of submitting a proposal to Routledge, which is an international academic publisher, and I signed a book contract and an amended manuscript will be submitted later this year. And the working title is Teenage Boys, Musical Identities and Music Education, an Australian Narrative Inquiry. And keep an eye out for it at your favourite academic bookstore.
Oh, how exciting. So obviously that's taken from your PhD. So are you needing to rewrite in order for it to be, I guess, that little bit, I don't want to say more readable. That sounds rude, doesn't it? But like or is it just basically your PhD? Here it is.
It's a good question. It actually will be a bit of combination of all those things. So there will be parts that are very similar, but there will be other parts that will be rewritten, and that's currently underway because a thesis has particular academic requirements that need to be met, whereas a book obviously is a different audience. And so the writing's got to reflect the audience. Just like we would advocate differently for particular audiences, the same in this academic writing space as well. Yeah. Well, so it's a lot of work, but I'm really, really proud of this particular project.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, I'll tell you what, I will buy your book straight away. I want to read those stories. So
they're wonderful. Thank you. They're wonderful stories. They really are. And I've gone back and reread them because I'm just so personally invested in them as well. And I probably know these students when they're 17, 18 years old, probably even better than the current, the students, the young men now remember themselves. But when I read them, I get senses of joy, laughter, camaraderie, fun. There's times where I'm crying reading the stories because what the students are revealing is so personal that you can't help be drawn into what they're saying and see the huge and significant meaning that music has in their lives.
So these boys and their families must have had and still have an incredible trust and relationship with you.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'm really thankful to these now young men and their families. And through the process of all of this, it really did solidify a relationship, which I think is quite powerful. And I still keep in contact with all these students. Um, you know, they reach out on social media and they send emails at times, and I'm referees for jobs and all sorts of things that go on. And I do that for other students as well, but probably even more prominently for these students. And I think because as well, they were involved in the interview process and the research while they were a kid at school, it even actually added another element to their music education that was out of the norm. It just became so much deeper in what we were doing. And the students themselves became invested in the research. They became really interested. And even in a different school, students were still interested in the research, hadn't even participated, but they could actually relate to what they were seeing in the research outputs in terms of the thesis. They would just love opening up the thesis and opening up research articles and reading it and saying, yeah, that's me. That's also my story. And I even had students from a different school say, I want to also buy your book because I've told them before it's a dream of mine to write this book. So it just, I didn't believe it when I started this journey, but the power of stories and their ability to resonate with people and help us think about the world differently, or perhaps challenge what we've taken for granted, has really inspired me in my work.
I could not agree more about that power of narrative. I mean, it's one of the main early childhood appropriate pedagogies, you know, age appropriate, but I would argue for everyone. We all need that story. You know, I think that's hardwired into us. That's how lessons have been traditionally learnt. In tribal systems, that's how stories were told, how children were taught, is through story. It's so powerful.
Absolutely.
So that whole narrative thing sounds really interesting. It sounds a lot more interesting than stats and stuff. But I guess you still had to do some stats, did you? Or not so much?
I didn't actually. For this particular project, there is no statistics at all. And that's really interesting because when I started this particular journey, I went and spoke to Professor Margaret Barrett at UQ, and I said I want to do a study. I was teaching daily music at the time, and from prep to year 3, and I
Yes.
said, you know, as part of all of this, I need to advocate for this program. It's a significant investment. You know, questions have been asked all the time. Do we really need this? You know, give us some evidence to back up it's as good as you say it is. And so that actually was one of the big drivers in me wanting to complete doctoral research, was to basically be able to support my claims and learn how to do that more rigorously. And Margaret is, as a leader, a world leader in narrative inquiry and music education. She said, yes, you could do that, or have a look at this. I went away from her office with basically a trolley full of narrative theses. And then my homework was to read the theses. And I just remember, and I thought, you know what, this is ridiculous. Like stories, whatever. Like I just need some numbers to you know, I need some data, people. But the stories are the data. And I started reading these narratives of other researchers, teacher researchers. And I found myself on the lounge on school holidays, weeping, reading their theses, because the stories they were telling and the impact that was captured in the stories was something that a number would never, ever be able to do.
Maybe more people will do their PhD if they know that this is a possible pathway. Because until
That
you,
would
I
be, I
didn't.
would love that for
Yeah,
people. Yeah, I think that's, for me, I really don't think of myself as somebody incredible. I honestly just think of myself as an ordinary person who grew up in a middle school family, went to a primary state school. If I can do it, anyone can do it. I really do believe that. And maybe what is missing is just the strategies to get there. And I'm really passionate about that because I do think anyone can do this if the right strategies and guidance is in place. So yeah, I'd absolutely recommend it to everybody. If you doubt yourself, reach out to somebody who has done this kind of work and they can actually help you map out some strategies and how it can become achievable.
that is great advice. And I will confess that I didn't even realize it was a possible strategy, as part of your PhD. To me, when I thought of PhD, it's all about reading lots of things and putting together lots of numbers and running, so I think that's very encouraging for everyone. So thank you. We should all
Yeah, I
get on
think,
that.
yeah, absolutely. We absolutely should, and we need more of it because we need more evidence-based advocacy. More than ever, music education is in danger. So, at times I've even referred to us as endangered species as music teachers. But research is really interesting, and particularly postgraduate research studies, because you can craft projects to be whatever you like them to be. It can be based on your teaching, it can be based on others' teaching, it can be based on numbers and words and all combination of both. There's so many ways to construct research projects. But all you need to get started is a curiosity, a question. And you're not doing research to prove something, but you're doing research to find an answer that needs to be known. And if you have a question or you're seeing something in your classroom and you think to yourself, why is this happening? Or how is this happening? That's a research study. Go and do a master's by research or a PhD.
I love that. This is a great call to action. We should jump on
Absolutely.
this. Thank you. I love it. Now, can we go back to your research grant? Congratulations on that one. Tell us more about that. Are you doing more research or is this the same?
Oh, this is, well, so what happens in academic roles is that you have three components. You have teaching, and in my role, I teach into additional teacher education and music teachers and undergraduate and master's programs. The next part of your role is research and your own personal research agenda and supervising postgraduate research students, high degree research students. And then the third component of your role is service and community engagement. So as part of my research component, I need to keep researching, and I want to keep researching. I'm really quite passionate about continuing to understand music education and its place in the world and how it can contribute positively to transform lives. So this particular grant that I got was competitive application, and I'm really, really proud of this particular study as well. And it builds upon my PhD studies. And it looks, so my PhD was looking at combination of music, education, and psychology, and that's the trajectory that my research is following. So this project aims to investigate how a trauma-informed approach to music education might support the mental health and well-being of children and young people in community settings. So internationally, community music education programs have been positioned as an opportunity for intervention and employed in various mental health initiatives. However, this research is only emerging in Australia. So through three nationally recognised Australian case studies involving rich qualitative and arts-based data, this research will generate important insights as to how trauma-informed community education programs can support the psychological needs of children and young people in non-medical and community-based way. And the reason that I'm starting out in communities is because there's lots of great work going on in community settings in this space that the school systems could benefit from. Obviously, with the exacerbation of the coronavirus and everything else that's gone on, mental health has come under a spotlight. And so this is a way to also learn more about what's happening in our lives and use music as a resource to positively transform them.
Wow. And there is a lot going on. That's pretty wonderful. So this is great. So you're going to like look into that, do some research into what is happening and how it benefits those kids the way it is now. Are you also going to be looking at what we could do to further those programs, to expand those programs, or you're just really looking at what is happening now in our society and how it benefits the kids?
So it's a bit of everything actually. And this particular study is, I guess, the beginning of what will become probably a significant body of work over many, many years. And it's looking at particularly the music education aspects of these programs, particularly their pedagogies, and how we can learn from those and bring that into schools, but also what are the recommendations for these programs to continue to grow and improve. And the hope as well, I mean, these programs are generally funded through philanthropic donations or essentially government funding and or the generosity of volunteers. They're not very well funded at all. And so the hope as well is that this research can be used in advocacy of these programs to help generate funding and other things. I guess the other thing as well is that it sounds like this particular work is quite niche, but what is really happening is that this work in trauma-informed community music education settings is probably an extreme example of what we see in schools. And by looking at the extreme example, we then can transfer all this work back into schools. So it's incredibly important and highly transferable to the work that we do as school music teachers.
Yes, and that's what's going through my head because I can't get the school music teacher part out of my head, because what is happening in these groups, it's like an expansion of what happens in my classroom every day, every half hour, when the new bunch of kids comes in and you've got so many little backgrounds and some really sad stories. Even in the best schools, there are kids in there that have come from the saddest circumstances, and we're providing a lifeline for them in our music lesson. We're the ones that are holding their hands in a circle. We're the ones that are using their name in a song in a really gentle, encouraging way. We're making eye contact with them one-on-one when we're playing a little hand game. We're giving them those therapeutic moments and the belonging. And we're doing all that in the music classroom. The music classroom is a magic place to be. And I think that is what these community groups are also trying to do. And part of me wants to say, you people who are doing that, come and have a look at what happens in our classroom. Do you know, I think, is it wrong to think that some groups could also learn from what we do in our rooms, as well as us learning from them?
I don't think it's wrong at all. I think you've nailed it on the head. Because the reality is the practices you've just described are also trauma-informed approaches to music education. And this is the thing, that even though there are these, I guess, identifying programs as trauma-informed approaches, there's lots of work that's going on that is trauma-aware, but not labelled as such. The reality is trauma-informed practice is just best practice. Yes. And that's what we're really looking at. We're looking at best practice in music education, but particularly for vulnerable young people. What is best practice for these people? And it's all about inclusion, isn't it? And that's what this work is doing.
And that comes back to, I know your love and my love is just that excellent pedagogy, you know, and of course, just being a decent human being and considering those people. That's amazing. So I am also, what comes to mind is Together Sing, because just before I got on this call to you, I was working on the video. Something like Together Sing, which of course I'm personally very invested in, is the sort of event that might really help these community groups and schools to expand that knowledge. So we would certainly love to, we're hanging on your work so that we can help hook into that through Together Sing as well.
And I think that's an example of another great initiative. There's so many out there that is in support of young people and children and their mental health and well-being. And we know as teachers that it happens, it works, because we see it every day. But interestingly, the research is still catching up. We haven't yet got the documentation to really use as evidence-based advocacy in this space. It's an emerging space. It's on the horizon. It's about to flourish in research, but we're just not quite there yet. But that's why we need to do it.
I do love the sound of that, and it sounds to me like that will fill in a little bit of a gap that I feel is there. Like I'm loving the new, well, I'm going to say new, it's probably been there for ages, but it seems to me the increased neuroscientific evidence, I think that's really powerful for us, isn't it? And it's proving that it actually, music education actually does help cognitive development and all of those sort of things. But what you're talking about, it's almost like a missing link to that proof. Adding almost the human side. I know that's not the right words, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, there's so much, there's been evidence of extra musical benefits. I think I've found stuff, at least in Kodo-inspired teaching, from the 60s. And interestingly, when the Hungarian primary music school started in Hungary, and they started doing daily singing in schools, the way that they advocated for the expansion of those programs was not because of the musical benefits, was because of all of the scientific studies that they were doing about academic achievement and health and other things going on for these children. So it's really interesting, the cycles that we go around in terms of our advocacy approaches. But I think what we are still learning to do in scientific study is how to measure all of that. We don't yet quite have it. What we do know, it's undeniable that music can make a positive and significant transformational difference to the lives of all ages, all people of all ages. We do have some idea how to measure it, but we're still figuring it out. And I think in terms of neuroscience and psychology, there's great potential here. I think probably over the next 10 years, we're going to see huge advancements.
That's good. I love that optimism, that let's do that. Yes, it'll come. It'll come. Now, what would you consider? You've had a really interesting career thus far. What about highlights of your journey as a music educator? And gratitude comes along with that, I think. And I'm certain it would be difficult to pick a few, but I'm going to ask you to anyway.
There are so many. There are so many things that I'm grateful for. And I guess the first thing is my own music education. As I mentioned previously, I went to a Queensland state primary school at a time where every school in the state had a dedicated music teacher and an instrumental program. I started learning, I went to choir in year 3 and continued for the rest of my life, basically. I started group saxophone lessons in year 5. I can remember the names of my teachers.
Oh, yes. Oh, come on, spill some.
Thank you, Mrs. Alison Cook, who was my saxophone teacher in year 5 and a woodwind teacher. Mrs. Jill Brooks was my classroom music teacher, and they're probably my strongest memories. I can still visually see and imagine the music classroom in my primary school. I can for other classrooms, but particularly the music classroom. I can remember what the way the board was set up. I can remember the way our books were set up. I can remember the songs that we played and the games that we played. We learned recorder, all these things that we did in the music classroom. What became even more fulfilling for me was then when I started to recreate that for myself in my own students. And so the songs that I played as a kid, I also play with my students as well. And so that was really quite meaningful. I then went to St. Lawrence's College, and I was taught by Dr. Anthony Young and all of the amazing team that's there. And that was really quite incredible. And I started at the same year that Anthony started at St. Lawrence's as well, in 1998. So we sort of did our St. Lawrence's journey together. He's obviously still there. But then I went on to UQ, and I was taught by the amazing Dr. James S. Kelly, Reka Chanik, and Marie Hennessy. Reka was actually, I was in second year, and I was in her first second year class when she started. And so that was just wonderful as well. She was a huge influence in my development. But I guess, and then I did masters with James and Marie and Reka as well, and then on to PhD studies. But I guess all of that combined, really, really positive music education experiences.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm really lucky and others aren't as lucky. And I probably didn't realize it at the time because I just wasn't aware of what was going on out in the big wide world. I just thought it was normal because all of my education up until the end of masters, or even PhD studies, was Kodály-inspired music education. And for me, I thought that was just normal. That was just how people learn music. And it was very odd then to suddenly learn, well, actually, there are many ways to do music, and there's lots of different shapes and forms, and some are successful, some aren't successful. But what I did, and for the people around me, it was clearly working. So that was what was really interesting in that space. I was really grateful for my music education. And then following that, I've been so grateful for the opportunities that have come my way. As I mentioned before, at BBC, I founded a Music Every Day program for students from prep to year 3. Music every day. Like,
Yes.
prior to every day, we did only have once a week. And what I did though, was I saw it happening around the place and I thought, we can do this. And so what I offered to do was just take the preps. There was only one prep class at the school at that point. And I just said, how about I just take them for 20 minutes every day? I'll just do it on top of my load. It's fine. I've got a little space here. You won't even notice it. I'll just come and do it. It'll be fine. And they said, okay, fine, Jason, off you go. Go do your music thing. Keep me happy. And what started to happen is it started getting significant attention because the difference going from once a week to every day, or twice a week to every day, was huge. Was very, very huge.
Can I just interrupt you? You noticed the difference. I mean, obviously, anyone listening in music education out there knows this is once a week to daily, chalk and cheese. But did the classroom teachers also notice a difference?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And you can't really fathom the difference between the two scenarios until you live it, because it is so different and it's the way it should be. It really is what music education is. And so a number of things as part of this picture is that I started to advocate quite strongly that this would have a positive impact on areas other than music, such as literacy as a big one. And the school at the time was hugely into phonological awareness and testing of it quite rigorously. And that was also linked to issues and concerns more generally around boys' literacy. And so they were doing all that testing, and I was saying, it's going to help, it's going to be so amazing, and I'm seeing it, and I was teaching syllables and sounds and all sorts of things. And they did the testing, and at the end of the year, they said, we've got our results back, and this is the worst cohort we've ever had.
No.
The worst cohort we've ever had. They'd completely failed the phonological awareness. But it was really interesting. We had a big meeting. We brought together myself as the music teacher, the prep classroom teachers and the assistants, the literacy support team, the heads of learning and teaching, and the principal of the primary school, everyone got together at a big important meeting about all of this. And we discovered in the meeting that we were actually using different terminology for the same concepts. So for instance, if I was asking, how many sounds do you hear in the word cat? I would say 1 sound. Whereas the phonological awareness team would be saying, well, no, actually that's 3 sounds, k-at.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, well, then I've made a problem here because I'm confusing the kids in terminology around the difference between sound and syllable. And then we'd also discovered that I would say, for instance, the beat is consistent, steady, and constant. Whereas the literacy team would say, this is the beat. And so their version of beat was actually the rhythm.
Rhythm.
So we had all of our terminology mixed up. So what was happening to these poor little kids is that the music teacher will come in and say, here are your sounds and rhythms and syllables and everything else. But then they have a literacy lesson soon after, and it will be the complete opposite. No wonder they were so confused. So I said, don't worry, I'll go in and fix it. I've got a really good rapport with these students. We'll sort this out. And I went in and I clarified all the terminology, and we practiced and practiced and practiced. And actually very, very quickly after, because they listened to what I said, they were really keen. And I just said, I'm sorry, boys, we just made a mistake here. Let's clarify this terminology. And they all went, oh, okay. And then the results went through the roof.
Oh, good.
So
there was a happy ending there.
So the power of the story is music, daily music education in itself, in isolation, is not enough. It's being part of the broader curriculum and connecting and collaborating with all of your colleagues that then makes it truly remarkable. And so what happened is that this amazing, these results, not just in literacy, but more broadly, you could see it in terms of the way the kids were acting with one another and part of a community, was observed by the classroom teachers because it happened in their classroom. It was too much for kids to come walk about the school every day. You'd be losing 20 minutes round trip. So every music lesson every day happened in the classroom, and the teacher often sat in the room doing their planning. And so they were witnessing the power of music education firsthand, and they became the biggest advocates for the program. So at the end of prep, the principal would turn to the prep teacher and say, should this happen in year 1? And he would just say, yes. At the end of year 1, the principal then turned to the year 1 teacher and said, should we continue this? And they just said, absolutely. End of year 2, and we're getting into serious school learning at the moment, should this continue? Absolutely. So the classroom teachers were actually the gatekeepers to this program expanding.
Wow, and that's becoming big. That's becoming more than you giving up 20 minutes, mind you, that's big enough, 20 minutes of your own time for one class each morning. This is now becoming a bigger systemic thing. The school would really have to believe in it to invest in that staffing and processes and timetabling and all of those things.
That's exactly right. And it became too big on top of my, I'll just do it as a voluntary role on top of my role, because, if you've got several classes per cohort, it's several hours of teaching per day. And so it became a financial investment. And that's what the school had to decide. And it had huge, it was a very, very, very fortunate position at the time. And that financial capacity was there to support the program expanding, and it has remained intact. And every year, doing budgets and prioritizing particular priorities, the question was asked, should we continue this? Because it's costing us doing something else. And the classroom teachers, again, always came back and said, yes. There were even questions about where should this come from in terms of time allocation? We've got to do particular implementation plans set by the QCAA and the UCARA. We'll actually take it from literacy. So daily music at the time actually took away from literacy time because they could see the benefits in the program.
Mm, very powerful. It's great hearing stories like that. It means for the rest of us, do not give up. Keep chipping away. You don't know what you
Keep
will
chipping
achieve.
away. I think dream big as well.
Yes.
And that was the thing. And you know, I even, they wanted evidence-based research. So I said, I'll go get it. And that, as I mentioned earlier, that's where the PhD became a big part of it as well.
Yeah, that's real commitment. Thanks, Jason. That's fabulous.
Definitely commitment.
Yeah. Oh, you want some research? All right, I'll do that for you. Okay. Let's get to the Tony Foundation. I've only connected with these people relatively recently, but I would love you to tell everybody about the Tony Foundation and what's the contribution that you make to this group.
They are a fabulous group, and I'm incredibly grateful and appreciative to what's going on in this space. And so this project is really talking about music education right from the start, and it's a collaborative national initiative led by the Albert's Tony Foundation, and they united in their collective belief in the power of music to positively transform lives. And the aim is simple: to provide quality music education to all Australian primary school children, which ensures access and equity. And I have to say, the strength of this project is in the consultation with diverse individuals and organisations, not just from education, but music industry, research, and philanthropy sectors. It's actually bringing everybody together. And what I'm also incredibly thankful for the Tony Foundation for is they're doing the work that music teachers just can't do because we're just so exhausted, just trying to teach music, just trying to keep our own program alive. And it's also non-music teachers advocating for music teachers. I think when someone advocates for an interest that they have an invested interest in themselves, you know, it doesn't really have the strength and the convincingness that one needs. However, having an external body, a huge collection of individuals coming together saying, this is really important, and they're lobbying political parties, governments, and policy decision makers, it's been really, really amazing to see that work in action. So I've been a member of this group since its inception and have provided advice to the project, drawing upon my broad experience in national teacher associations, schools, and teacher education. And I'm also a member, there's numerous groups as part of this project actually, and I'm also a member of the knowledge-based working group and provide research or expert research advice as well. So what I would encourage everyone to do, there's a number of reports that have been released by this particular project, and they're all free and they're all available online. And so head to www.alberts.co/music-education, and you can find all of the outputs to date of the project, and there are more to come. The most recent is called Fading Notes, which is an investigation into how primary school music education is delivered in universities around the country. And this was a commission report funded by the Day Foundation. So again, philanthropic association contributing to this work. And it's all the things that we know already, but to see it in print and to see those numbers as a published report is quite staggering. It's quite frightening in a way, because the amazing pre-service music teacher education that we were fortunate to have is diminishing and eroding very quickly.
And I will put that link in the show notes for sure, so people can just pop on and click over and find all of that. It so is worth doing. The other thing I appreciate about these reports is that, especially I'm thinking of the Fading Notes, it's really well written for people to consume easily. There's infographics and simple. Makes it sound like I'm saying that. I'm saying it's a nice, easy read, because again, we're all really busy, and a whole page of stats, which I'm sure they had, that's not something that's easy to scan or useful for us. So it's worth too following the Tony Foundation on LinkedIn and places like that, because they will post some little snippets and you can share. So I think that's going to help the general understanding. But yes, the fading notes was really just proving what we knew was happening. I mean, we're facing that now in Queensland, as we seem to be generating some success in an attempt to reinstate some of our lost programs. Now, of course, there's no teachers to staff it, because that was all part of the degeneration over the past 10 years. So now we're having to reinstate music education. It's so difficult to get something back once it's gone. So we all know it's been disappearing. It's great to have proof there.
That's right, because the first thing, that someone says when you say something like music education has been eroded away in universities is, where's your proof?
Mm-hmm.
And how bad is it really? Where are the numbers? And that's what this report does. And you're right, another great thing about the Tony Foundation is that they're aware of their audience. It's so strategic, and that's what I really appreciate. That this report is for general consumption. It's for news outlets to pick up and to be pushing out there and generating to the world. It's for politicians and policymakers to pick up and be able to quickly, as busy people, pick up and see highlights and see the impact really clearly. And so, I would strongly encourage everyone to get to rally round this particular project, because it is the thing that could actually turn the tide for music education in the country. I really believe it is.
Yes, I do too. I think the fact that it's so ecumenical is really positive. As you know, I'm definitely a Kodai-inspired educator, and we do our bit in our professional associations. But the Tony Foundation rallies everyone, us and the ORF people and the Dalcroze people and the business people, the people that have a music education business, or music producers, or that they really are a bit of an umbrella body. It doesn't matter what faction you support and where you come from. We all believe in music for children, and they are working for all of us, which is wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, incredibly grateful to their work.
And we're grateful for you doing your work within that too. So thank you. Now, we have already talked about this, but we've got to go on specifically to advocacy, which we've already talked about. So for a start, we need to hook up with the Tony Foundation and share some of that content. That is really valuable. But is there any other specific advice, and maybe even how your research will play in your answer?
So I think, we're always going to have to advocate for music education, and everyone needs to be part of the conversation, locally in their context, but also the national conversation as well. So in terms of nationally, the first thing that I think everyone can do that's really easy, and you can do it straight away, is join the Australian Society for Music Education. And I'm declaring a bias, obviously, but they are the people that governments go to when they want to ask something about music education. And so if they are stronger as an association, that means they're going to be able to give a stronger response. And I also then obviously would strongly advocate your other favourite music teacher associations. And there's so many of them, and there's great work that's going on. But your membership helps them be your representative and advocate on your behalf. And I should say as well, don't be afraid to get involved in the committees. I think at times people think, oh, you've got to be particular, something or other to get involved. No, it's just ordinary people serving the community and trying to make the world a better place. And, decisions are made, after all, by those who show up. So don't complain about it, get involved and be part of it. The next thing I would say in terms of your local space is you need to, and you can, contribute to evidence-based advocacy. A great place to start if you're feeling a bit uncertain are the Bigger, Better Brain courses delivered by Dr. Anita Collins. And she tours all around, not just the country now, but internationally. She was recently in Scotland.
How exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. It was fantastic. And these courses are deliberately designed to empower teachers to engage with research and report on the benefits of music in music education.
Yes.
The next thing is keep on reading. Do your own reading, access materials for free through your state library, and start to deepen your understanding of these topics that are relevant to your context and what you're passionate about. Remember, think about the story before about my music everyday situation. Literacy was a big interest in that context. So that's where I focused my reading. How is music education contributing to literacy? Different schools and different people within different schools will value different things, and you need to speak to your audience. So it is worth going to speak to those people and seeing what they find to be important. The next thing that everyone can do, it will just take time and a bit of work, but anyone can go and do master's and doctoral research studies. You really can. And this will help you learn the skills to be a researcher and be in a position to powerfully advocate. Research degrees are training degrees. They train you to be a researcher. And so what I would encourage people to do is, like myself, become a teacher researcher, that dual role. And that will allow you then to spot more easily those curiosities in your classroom and give you the tools to be able to do something about it. And as I mentioned, I think all of that combined will allow you to pinpoint and target your advocacy arguments. And you can feel confident that when you say something, it's evidence-based. I used to feel like at the time, I'd say, I wouldn't go this extreme, but music makes you smarter. But how does it do that? And does it really? And what exactly about music and music education makes you smarter, or whatever that might be? So there's some hot tips.
They are fabulous hot tips. I love it. It's terrible, but you make me want to do more study. I do not have time to do more study. Stop it. So you're so inspiring, Jason. You're so inspiring. All right.
You come and do it at ECU with me, Deb.
Yes, I'll just go over to Perth and you can be my supervisor person.
Well, in actual fact, in research studies, all my students are essentially all online students. And we meet in person at different times throughout the course of the degree. But research degrees are very different to undergraduate coursework degrees, in that you don't necessarily complete units. It's about independent research study and guidance from a research mentor. So I've got students from all around the country actually doing research degrees.
Wow. Okay. Well, after people hear this episode, you'll get a whole lot of emails saying, oh, would you please help me do my research?
Yeah, we can get started. Feel free to reach out.
I love it. I love it, Jason. All right. We're up to nuggets of fabulous. You've already given us so much, but I'm just wondering if there's any other little tips and tricks and ideas and things, or maybe even little things from actually when you're in the classroom with the kids, some things that you love to do or some advice. Just basically, Jason, nuggets of fabulous.
I think there's so many things that I love. It's difficult to pinpoint things, but I think particularly in the secondary context, but there's also opportunities in primary. some of my favorite music has been introduced to me by my students and colleagues, or even pedagogies, little teaching tips by colleagues, or kids have sort of led me down that pathway. And I'm really, I try to take notice of the music that students bring into the classroom, whether it's humming or what they might be listening to on their phone they're not supposed to have, or whatever it might be. I want to know what they're doing, because I'm genuinely interested in their music and how it means something to them, and how can I tap into that. And I'm also then really interested in the music they leave the classroom humming or singing or dancing to as they leave. And it could be music from class or something different. But for me, I want music to be meaningful in people's lives. And if they're doing something because they love it by bringing it into the classroom and leaving the classroom with it, I'm interested in that. Probably the other thing as well, as a nugget of fabulousness, is sharing and collaboration. I think, listening, even reflecting upon what we've spoken about already, the power of bringing people together, sharing practice and collaborating and building on the strengths of different individuals can't be understated. So that's something else that perhaps wasn't as obvious to me personally when I started teaching, but I have seen over and over again, particularly working with national teacher associations. And this then requires building really positive relationships with people. And that is a skill that you can develop and continue to work on, being able to connect with people and form meaningful relationships that result in impactful work can be really incredible.
I could not agree more. I could not agree more. That is, yes, amen. I want to say amen. They are really...
Well, we see that with you and Debbie, don't we? Steb and Debbie, like the team, the power of that partnership has literally been transformative for Queensland and beyond. So it just shows that, yes, one person can make an incredible difference, but 2, 3, 4, 5, an army of music teachers. Wow, watch out, world, because that's something that can be incredible.
Thank you. Yes, let's get this army marching. Oh, actually, we already are.
Yeah.
This has just been, it's so inspiring. I am so inspired. I know everybody else listening must be really inspired. Thank you for taking this time to talk to me, but you do get a chance to get on your soapbox before we finish, even though I can't imagine what you would add, but I'm still going to ask you if you want to get on your soapbox before we say goodbye. And it's just been a joy, Jason.
It's always a joy being in your presence, Debbie. So thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it. And to all the listeners as well. I think my parting advice would be simply get involved. Get involved in music education beyond your immediate context. Music teachers need to mobilise. This is a real call to action. And you need to cause, and we need to cause, some good trouble. Don't rely upon somebody else, because it'll be too late. It's really up to us right here, right now. And it's going to be, as we're seeing, a grassroots movement that saves our discipline, that saves music education. And we've seen this already with the Music for Every Child Every Week campaign. It's the power of music teachers coming together and saying, this is important. Overwhelmingly, research demonstrates that music education can make a profound difference to individuals and communities. So make sure your children and your students don't miss out on these opportunities to love music just as much as you do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jason Goopy. It's been amazing.
Thanks, Debbie.
As we know, laughter relieves stress. Don't lose sight of the funny side of life. Did you hear about the kidnapping at school? Oh, it's okay. He woke up. Thank you so much for watching our Crescendo Music Education podcast. For more information about all things crescendo, including membership and music education resources, visit us at crescendo.com.au. Don't forget to like and subscribe.